Welcome to Normal Island Live. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm joined by the absolute legend, Helena, aka No Justice MCG. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's a couple of shows in a couple of weeks, so it's good to be back as always, and looking forward to the show tonight.
I know I feel really lucky, actually. You know, we've got a couple of shows in a couple of weeks. This is results, but this is what we've got coming up on tonight's show. Did Adnan Hassan both sides Nazis? The Greens surged to 17% in a latest poll. Sarah Pochin has a racist meltdown, and British Airways pulls advertising to Louis Theroux podcast. Now, you can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member. But on to our first story. Independent Alliance MP Adnan Hussein has caused a little controversy again after his latest take on protests. The MP who was involved in your party is officially registered as the nominating officer, said this: "The average Brits, black, white or brown, just want to live peacefully, coexist with their neighbours and live a decent life with dignity. The vast majority of Brits do not want Nazis crusading through our streets, nor equally absurd counter demonstrators. Calm down." Now, Owen Jones picked up on this and he replied, "Do you think the anti-fascists who mobilised at Cable Street were equally absurd to the fascists?" Adnan responded with a screenshot of an earlier tweet he made. "Peaceful protest by all means. I admit my initial post wasn't articulated clearly, but some of the imagery coming out of yesterday's counter-protests is exacerbating a situation which is already extremely volatile." They then exchange a back and forth. So Owen comes back with equating anti-fascists and fascists is really gruesome stuff, and the argument you're making here was deployed at Cable Street, counter demonstrators at the time. Adnan, political landscapes change over time, Owen. Each requires a response tailored to the given moment. I think I'm safe in betting a rise of an extreme movement calling for the mass deportation of people like me and my family is affecting my life in many ways may not even comprehend. I'm not here to cater to people's hurt feelings. Lives are on the line, and I wish to find the actual solution. I may be wrong, but I'm very entitled to my opinion, and I know many like me are feeling the same." Finally, Owen says, "You are entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to mine, which is that equating fascists to anti-fascists belittles the menace posed by fascism and dangerously stigmatizes anti-fascists." Now, I have to say, this is a really odd thing for Adnan to say. I just can't comprehend why anyone would both side Nazis and counter demonstrators, right? Even if you had some people on the counter demos who, I don't know, you believe make the anti-fascist movement look bad, the ideologies, though, are the polar opposite. Now, I think it's fair to say that your party has had, a tumultuous time, and it doesn't seem like things are getting much better. We still don't have the membership numbers. The only number we have that have been made public is the 20,000 signups when Zara Sultana unveiled a membership portal. Since the second membership portal was revealed by Jeremy Corbyn, we've had nothing. The last information we were told is that there is a migration process. But an email from your party shows the problems are far from over. If you signed up to your party only on the portal promoted by Zara Sultana on the 18th of September, you are a member of your party. To transfer your membership onto our portal and take part in the rest of our founding process, we just need you to do one thing. Fill in the form telling us at your party UK/join, selecting an "I already paid" option. Why is this necessary? Because your membership data is held by a different company, MAU Operations Limited. We've had no way to access it. That means we can't integrate you into our membership portal. But this last paragraph, I think, is the most telling. "Over the past month, we have done everything possible to secure the transfer of your membership data. Zara, Jeremy, Shoka, Adnan, and Ayub and Iqbal have all made written requests to MAU for the transfer to happen, but legal issues around ownership of the data, which are beyond your party's control, have so far proved intractable. That's why, with time passing, we're taking this step." Now, we have covered a lot of the updates with your party on Turn Left, and as we understand, MAU Operations Limited were the original holders of funds, which was set up by Andrew Feinstein, Jamie Driscoll, and Beth Winter. Now, it seems like MAU won't release the money, and this was quite literally admitted in the previous email. It's not even speculation. Of course, this has created online tensions between those who fall on one side or the other. Nicola James says MAU was only ever authorised to handle the data linked to early payments and to hold funds temporarily until your party was formally registered. Once it was registered with the Electoral Commission and incorporated as Your Party UK Limited, it became the sole lawful body with the right and responsibility for all data, funds, and party affairs. But we have Ben Timberley saying, so it appears that the collective ghouls behind your party are once again monstering the directors of MAU Operations Limited in writing to thousands of people, claiming that they are technically committing frauds. They also claim that Zara Sultana agrees with them. So, of course, we've got strong feelings there. But look, wherever you fall on this, I think we can all agree we are confused. I'm so confused. But compounding that confusion is the defection of Scottish Green Party councillors to your party. Breaking, 3 Scottish Green councillors have defected to Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana's new left-wing party. It means that your party now have their first political representation in Scotland. Now, what I'm confused about is that the Greens are a fully operational party. Okay, your party hasn't had its conference. And look, I was always under the impression that the membership would choose the candidates. Helena, before we talk about your party, what exactly do you think Adnan was saying? Was he really trying to both side Nazis and anti-fascists?
I mean, it certainly looked bad. I can't look into Adnan Hussein's soul. I'm not telepathic to understand what his original claims were in the tweet that he made. But I think it's broadly appealing to this demographic of people, as he points out, who aren't politically engaged and just want all of the protesters to go away so that the streets are quiet again. But the problem, of course, with that kind of framework, regardless, is that if you have Nazis on the street, if you have Nazis doing their protests and their parades and their marches, whatever it is, their rallies in the street, first of all, if you don't oppose them, they'll just continue doing it, assuming that they have carte blanche to get away with it because they don't feel like they have any opposition, right? They'll feel some level of galvanization that they've been allowed to get away with it so easily. And second of all of those people who are getting frustrated at the fact that there's protests and marches on the street, they're already frustrated by the fact that there are Nazis on the street doing the whatever disruptive activity that they're doing. The presence of counter protesters doesn't materially change that. Maybe things get a little bit more confrontational because there's now two groups with different ideologies going past each other, right? But again, it shows, as Owen correctly pointed out, a fundamental misunderstanding of the history of anti-fascism, of the history of protest, of the history of the opposition to the kind of things that, as Adnan points out, are oppositional to him personally. Like, these people are causing problems for Adnan Hussein and his family personally, as he points out in his own tweets there. And I'm like, well, this has been a historic way of opposing them. Do you think that these people shouldn't be opposed? Do you think there shouldn't be counter demonstrations if these demonstrations are going to happen, right? Because that level of disruption is going to happen anyway. The question is, will it go unchallenged? Will it be allowed to go ahead, assuming that there is no opposition? Which, as I said before, will only embolden those who are the ones who have genuine and antagonism towards Adnan Hussein and indeed Muslims across this country. It seems, even if it isn't both siding and it's just a poor turn of phrase that he's used, it's still incredibly short-sighted from him to not understand the reality of what the movement on the ground needs to be to oppose the rise of fascism in this country.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I don't think he actually believes that anti-fascists and fascists are the same, but it seems like he's doing the sort of centrist dad, like, well, both people can be bad. But what confuses me a little bit is, look, if you're prime minister or if you're a leader of one of the big parties, right? Again, you're a bit more worried about building electoral coalition. You don't want to be seen as like picking a side. I know you should be picking side on Nazis, right? But let's just drop Nazis for a second. Whenever there's sort of political contention, you always get a politician who say, well, both sides can be bad, right? But this guy is an independent MP of a very small political party that doesn't really exist yet. Like, he doesn't need to be like this sort of centrist statesman that's trying to appeal to everyone. He can just be someone who can be unequivocally like anti-fascist. But again, like a big mistake here is that, well, I think people are realizing it now, is that Adnan Hussein isn't left wing. No, of course
No,
he
no, it's
is an
not.
MP. He is an MP who won on sectarian grounds, but the guy's a fucking landlord and he's a social conservative, so he's not even remotely left wing. So actually, he's a political centrist, centre right, who just doesn't support genocide, which I guess is better than most politicians, but it's not good enough, is it?
Well, look, yeah, absolutely. Like that's the whole point. The whole problem here is that if it's going to be a left wing party explicitly
Mm. Mm.
espousing left wing values, why do you have a guy who is continually opposing that? And even when he called out like the excess capitalism or rogue capitalism, whatever, I forget the phraseology that he used on Twitter, and I'm just like, well, yeah, you would care about like just the excesses of capitalism and not like the basis of capitalism,
Mm.
because you are the beneficiary of capitalism as a member of the bourgeois, as a rentier, as a landlord, right? And I'm just like, well, you don't properly understand the issues with capitalism in this country, because it is the capitalism that you are pretending to decry here that allows you to take money from your tenants to spend on luxury sports cars. And I'm like, well, at that point, what do you, again, you say you represent your community, and I don't disagree with that. I am in no way trying to impugn the level to which that Adnan Hussein, as a member of parliament, represents his constituency, actually in the way that kind of the spirit of first past the post is supposed to represent, right? In having the constituency link. But what he is his duty to his constituents is going to be incredibly different to the kind of positions that he should be taking if he wants to be a leading figure in a new left wing party or any party uh, supposedly of the left. And again, he seems to me just like a liberal Democrat who's good on Gaza.
That's basically it, isn't it? He didn't really move basically on other politics when it came to moving political party. It was just Gaza. I do want to ask though. I mean, what are your thoughts on the latest Your Party developments in terms of defections? I mean, Scottish Green councillors defecting, and again, like I think people are saying the Scottish Greens aren't as good as the Welsh and English Greens, right? But my confusion comes from the fact that the Greens are a fully fledged political party. Why would you jump ship to your party when it hasn't started yet?
And I mean, I couldn't look into these people's souls, but I'm
Hmm.
assuming they were people who wanted like full fledged, unapologetic socialism, right? The kind of 2019 manifesto from the Labour Party that had to be everything to everybody and include all the radical
Hmm.
policies they dreamed up, rather than
Hmm.
a prospectus for government that will unify enough people to both be manifest change to the degree that's necessary to save the country, whilst also being in a position to be implemented in terms of how Westminster would allow you to do so, or Holyrood in these people's cases, or not. Right? Like again, I hate to be this trying to take a pragmatic perspective, because those kind of people really irritate me. But I mean, this again, like maybe if your party was increasing in the polls and there was this groundswell of support, and if they feel personally like that this new party represents their values greater than the Scottish Greens, then you know what, more power to them. They're well within their right to do that. That's how our electoral system works. And anyway, there's Holyrood elections in May regardless. It's not like they're going to be defected for an entire term. It's going to be only a few months at best. But I don't personally see the argument for this, especially given the meteoric rise of the Greens in England and Wales, and the fact that Gillian Mackay and Ross Greer are open to more collaborative working with Zach Polanski now the Greens are doing so
Hmm.
well. It doesn't seem like they're doing this for electoral reasons. It seems like this is an issue of values, and again, if that's up to them. But personally, I don't see the argument.
Yeah, I agree. If this is just the values, no issue with that. Confusing a little bit. I think it's more confusing on the Your Party side, though. Because again, I understand it is that members are supposed to decide all candidates. Now there's going to be candidates, what, for the next few months? I don't know. But again, I don't think we can see into people's souls. So we're
I
probably
mean,
going to wait until
maybe if
there's
there's a
any
local
developments.
branch who wanted to accept that they're going to be there, because again, like choosing the candidates democratically would be for the next set of elections, right?
Yeah.
So one would assume that that means that they could ask their
Mhm.
constituency, your party, to go, well, we would like to be this Polyrood constituency, or we'd like to be on the party list, or whatever it is, or we'd like to be a councillor. And then they can, offer themselves the membership if they want to get on that ballot. And there's, again, all more reason to that, but you can't really. They're sitting councillors
Mm.
until May for
Mm.
the local elections, so I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we'll wait to conference again. I'm not going to be really judgmental until the conference. That to me is the big time. But yeah, no, let's move on to our next story and leave that one behind. The Greens are breaking records yet again. They've now just hit 17% in a recent poll. It's actually a Lord Ashcroft poll. Reform leads with 28%. Labour joint second with the Tories on 18%, and just 1% behind are the Greens. Now, the seat breakdown would see Reform with 369 seats. That's plus 364. Massive, right? The Lib Dems followed with 81. Labour all the way down to 50. That's minus 361 seats. Ouch. S&P, Resurgence on 46. Conservatives all the way down to 38. And the Greens, 24. Plus 20 seats and applied on 7. God, we need PR so badly, don't we? Now, Stats for Lefties calculated which seats the Greens would win. Now, the full list is actually on your screen. I'm not going to read out all of them. But I find Hackney North and Hackney South very interesting, especially as Hackney North is Diane Abbott's seat. But not only that, not only the decent polling, they've also hit 150,000 members. So that was unveiled today. I think that's double since Zach Polanski took over, or at least double in the last couple of months. I also read a tweet. I don't know if this is confirmed. Maybe Helena in a second will tell me because she's a Green member. Is that there was a apparent motion on the 4th of October which said that the Greens have a strategy to get 150,000 members by 2030, and they've done it in a few months. Anyway, and aren't the right wing rattled, including Reform? Now, this is in reference to a different poll, but Zaya Youssef quote tweeted Helena, tried to attack her, but it backfired. Helena tweeted the breakdown of the Find Out Now poll that had the Greens on 15%, but this was distributed between different age groups. This poll has the Green Party 1 point away from first among the entire under 55 cohorts. Zaya Youssef, though, quote tweeted and said this. Newsflash, Green supporters don't understand how percentages work. Well, but that is how percentages do work. So, to put it bluntly or put it clearly, a total of 189 people out of 810 people aged between 18 to 54 said they would vote for the Greens, which is 23.3%. A total of 205 people out of the 810 polled would vote for Reform, and that's 25.31%. So a 1% swing from Reform to the Greens will put the Greens number 1 with the under 55-year-olds. How embarrassing for Youssef, right? And also, don't come for one of the UK's sharpest political minds and a personal friend of mine if you're going to get your facts wrong, right? At least get your facts right. Helena, 17% is huge. I mean, we could see the Greens as high as 25% next year. And I'm talking about, average rather than outliers. Do you think that's realistic?
I wouldn't say maybe 25. Again, the demographic that we're appealing to, I think that I hate to go with More in Common because I think that it's a little myopic, but I'll go with what they say, right? So More in Common, they divide up the electorate into different kind of ideological boxes. They've got 7 of them basically, and they're the 2 kind of demographics that the Green Party are appealing to are young progressive activists, or broadly older progressive activists too. That's one of their 7 blocks, but they're also increasingly appealing to what's known as the skeptical scrollers, i.e. people who are politically engaged online who hadn't been previously, who are pretty open to being convinced as to solutions. Because whilst lots of people aren't that ideological politically, people have a bunch of concerns and they're looking for politicians who will sell them ideas that will deal with those concerns, and then broadly that will dovetail into the kind of things that they already believe, right? So people who are scrolling social media, who are engaging with the content that the Green Party is making, they're far more likely to be won over to us, especially given that we do have very clear and obvious answers to the concerns that people are facing. Obviously, I think that there are plenty more votes that we can get. The fact that most of our votes are coming from Labour Party voters that have abandoned them because we are taking the place of what would traditionally be where they would be voting. Because whilst most people might disagree with us on certain issues, on something as basic as the sanctity of the welfare state, Labour have abandoned their entire voting bloc. Right, there are plenty of people who are maybe particularly socially conservative who might disagree with us on some of those issues, or might not be as heavily concerned about the environment. Right, fundamentally, they believe that the Labour Party should be there to represent and to defend the welfare state. And the first two things they did when they got into government was to attack the welfare state. And these are people who have been absolutely kind of hammered by the sensible centrist adults in the room version of Labour that Keir Starmer is running, right? And so the sky really is the limit in terms of how many of those voters that we can peel off. The question is how can we go after to actually get to the 25% figure that you're saying there that's going to require a bigger sector of the people who didn't vote at the last election, who majority, not plurality, but majority on the current polling are voting Reform. Reform have been really good at increasing the polls very specifically because they have won over people who were previous non-voters, those who felt disillusioned with the political system. So that's why we need to make sure we're going after those people, which broadly will come out the skeptical scroller demographic, more broadly, from what I can understand.
Yeah, it's really important that the left. I mean, historically, the left likes to go for non-voters. I mean, 2017 there was that youth quake, but a lot of non-voters voted. So, Reform have been doing a very good job of going for those non-voters. The Greens keep doing that. Did you know about I don't know who I'm referring to. I can't remember the name of the person, but there was apparent motion to get 150,000 members before 2030. I don't know if you heard about that. No.
Not a clue, not a clue. I mean,
Really
regardless, I
impressive.
mean, this is going to be super important, right? Is that people keep talking about, well, members doesn't translate into political
money.
popularity. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're absolutely right. There are a couple of things that's important here. Is that, first of all, it's more money in the coffers so we can launch a bigger election campaign, which is always important, always been a real kind of sticking point for left-wing political parties. They've always found it difficult to be able to raise the cash because they don't have billionaire mega donors like the Tories and Reform, and now Labour do, or the union backers that Labour have historically had. But when it comes to campaigning, people think that elections are won just on communications. And whilst that certainly is a place where you can win people over, lots of elections are won on the doorstep. Look at Mamdani, right? People talk about him going, "Oh well, Mamdani's just good because he's got slick videos on TikTok and Instagram." And first of all, he's got good policy, but second of all, what those Instagram reels and what those TikTok videos did for the Mamdani campaign was mobilize a team of canvassers. That's what's important. Having people energized on the ground and campaigning, especially in low turnout elections like we had last time, and was what usually happened at local elections, which is what's the next real big test for the Greens is the local elections in May. That's what those new members are going to be. Those are people who are going to go out and campaign, and not just campaign like Labour members do because they feel obligated at this point, but they're going to be energized. They're going to be wanting to make a change. And that's what Mamdani did. They took, 50% of their support during the Democratic primary from people who hadn't voted in a Democratic primary for the last 3 election cycles for the New York mayoralty. So that's the kind of thing that we can do with the Green Party, is not just try and get people to change their votes from other parties to us, but meet people on the doorsteps and say, look, we're campaigning on behalf of the Green Party. You're somebody who feels disillusioned with politics. Well, that's because you want to see the water companies nationalised. You want your bills to get lower. You want to see the welfare state be funded by the state. You want your local council to be building council houses. Therefore, you should vote for us, right? We've got these solutions to your problems. And if they can understand where we're coming from, because we have people on the ground who are communicating that, that's where those memberships are going to be really, really important. The number being big is good, the money is good, but fundamentally the key issue is being able to launch a ground campaign, which Reform don't have. We have that, Reform don't have that.
A lot of those Mandani videos had already people in them, like ordinary people who's approaching. So, you know, I think a lot of the Democratic Party were like, oh, we just need to make slick videos and we just need to use 80s font and we're all golden. Yeah, you need the policies first, but also it wasn't just social media. I mean, I think he did that walk from one end of New York City to the other, just spoke to loads of people. Incredible, incredible stuff. I do want to get, though, a quick response from you with Zaya quote tweeting you. Just quickly say, what's on your mind?
How embarrassing. How embarrassing. First of all, to get proved completely incorrect, as many people have done so in the replies, and you've just eloquently put there during this video. But the fact that this is a guy who is supposed to be someone who's doing head of policy for what is the most popular political party in the country at this point, who are leading every single poll by double digits in a lot of cases, right? He's supposed to be somebody who's a serious politician who's going to be there crafting state policy in the government of the mother of all parliaments. And he's out here having slap fights on Twitter with G-tier YouTubers. Like last week, he was beefing with Big John the Bosch father, and now he's out here pretending he knows how maths works to somebody who studied astrophysics. And I'm like, mate, get your brain in check, and B, get a life. Because fundamentally, if he actually was a genuine, serious politician, he would have better things to do than get mad at people on Twitter. But clearly, he doesn't have better things to do. And it's this approach to maths that the Reform Party has shown, given they've been running councils going, yes, we'll be able to cut your council taxes by stripping away all of the DEI and all the Americanized bullshit they talk about. They get into government and local authorities and go, oh, actually, most of our spending is on temporary accommodation and adult social care. Actually, we can't cut and we need to raise council tax. I'm like, yeah, maths isn't your strong point, is it, Reform?
I fundamentally disagree with you, Helena. You're not a G-list YouTuber. You're A-star, right? Fucking A-star. And also him going for the Bosch father is insanely hilarious. But Zaya doesn't... Look, there are many characters on the right wing, but tell you what, Zaya doesn't have the sauce. He ain't got the sauce, right? So he shouldn't be coming after you because he ain't got none. Good stuff. Good stuff. Before we go on to our next story, though, of course, I want to remind everyone that we are just 5 volunteers. And, you know, we do this around our full-time jobs. Our goal is to become full-time, meaning we can increase our content, be far more ambitious, and build a sustainable left-wing alternative. Your help has already made so much of a difference already, from equipment to covering rallies and interviews. Your support means everything. Now, we rely on small donations. So if you want to be part of a media organization that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. You can also become a YouTube member for just 99p. Thank you. Let's go on to our third story. Reform MP Sarah Pochin went on an insane racist rant on Talk TV, complaining that she sees black and Asian people on TV.
It drives me mad when I see adverts full of black people, full of Asian people, full of, you know, people that basically are anything.
What's wrong with that, Sarah? What's wrong with that?
Well, it doesn't reflect our society, and I feel that you know, your average white person, average white family is, like, I agree with you, Stuart, not represented anymore in TV.
There are lots of white people on television, Sarah, are there not? There are lots of white people. There are lots of white men. There are lots of white women.
Now, Pochin did take to Twitter to apologise. It's quite a long tweet. My comments on Talk TV phone-in earlier today were phrased poorly, and I unreservedly apologise for any offence caused, which was not my intention. The point I was making is that many British TV adverts have gone DEI mad. God, what is this DEI stuff? This is the UK, not America. And are now unrepresentative of British society as a whole. This is not an attack on any group, but an observation about balance and fairness in how our country is portrayed on screen. A study commissioned by Channel 4 as part of its Mirror on the Industry project found that black people were featured in more than half of adverts in 2022, up sharply from 37% in 2020 following the Black Lives Matter movement. By contrast, black people make up around 4% of the population in England and Wales, according to the 2021 consensus. Representation in advertising should reflect the diversity of modern Britain, but it should also be proportionate and inclusive of everyone. My comments were made in that context, and I stand by the principle that equality should mean fairness for all. Again, this obsession with DEI, it's so weird, okay? Even I think in America, most people might not even know what it is. If they do, they don't really care. In this country, no one knows what the hell DEI is. It's a stupid American import. But look, even if you wanted to have a conversation on representation, right? What she said in the clip was, it made her mad seeing people of color. I'm mad that there's black people. God, get over it. She didn't say, look, there may be, an overrepresentation of minorities on TV, right? 4% of the country are black, but, over half of TV apps have got black person there, right? Why didn't she say that and just that? No, because this wasn't about having a conversation. Again, you heard it yourself. She was just crying about non-white faces. Now, some have gone as far to say that anti-white racism is a big problem in this country. Rupert Lowe, of course, says anti-white racism is rife in 2025 Britain, and we shouldn't be afraid to fight it. By the way, if you use Twitter, I don't know how many of you use Twitter, right? If you go through Lowe's timeline, it's so funny. He's just a massive Karen. He has so much time on his hands. And look, if you're moaning about this, you're incredibly privileged, right? Now, many people have been pulling up this video as an example, and it's Anasawa apparently being racist against white people.
Every chief executive of every council and every government department, white. Every director of a department in Scotland, white. Every principal of a college or university in Scotland, white. Every head teacher in Scotland, white. Every chair of a public sector body in Scotland, white. Every High Court judge in Scotland, white. Every prison governor in Scotland, white. Every editor of a news organisation in Scotland, white. Why?
Why? Funny how Sarah Pocham was supposedly sorry, but that video, which I got, was from her tweeting it. Now, people have attacked former SNP leader Humza Yousaf for saying the same thing. Then there's this. When a white MP says TV ads are too black, she's called a racist and told to resign. But when a black actress said the royal family were too white, she was praised by the left and, ironically, made the star of a Christmas TV ad campaign. Racial entitlement has replaced racial equality. Now, look, I do think if you speak to most people who are apolitical, right, on the surface, they might say, well, actually, don't they have a point? But the thing is, though, there's a big difference, and that's power, right? If people in positions of power are only white when they're supposed to represent everyone, it doesn't seem crazy to me to say we want to address that. As long as you don't go down the road of liberal tokenism, which is to put people of colour, in these positions just because, when the quality of the candidates is the most important. And yes, that is the disaster of liberal IDPOL. From them, it's minorities regardless of views. Well, if you have a minority, yet they push the same views as the political elites, it means nothing, right? It's important to have working class people in positions of power. Because the main ingredients missing from liberal politics is class. But we're seeing a real-time freakout from the right wing, and they're now suddenly concerned with representation. I mean, what? Do they want quotas? I mean, sure. TV adverts do sometimes over-represent people of colour. And, if you're watching Navarre, you saw me sit on there. But basically, I'm a brown guy myself. And sometimes I find it a little bit cringe when you have like one white kid out of an entire class who are like black and brown, right? And you're like, well, it's not really realistic, okay? I think that, or I think to myself, it's either showing a representation of an area with a high amount of minorities, right? They're the two thoughts that go from my head for a split second, and then I just carry on. That's it, right? It's probably just some well-meaning liberal representation. But it's still true that the media is overwhelmingly white, and guess what? That doesn't bother me either. Look, we currently have a climate crisis, homelessness, housing crisis, billionaires buying up our democracy, and the right wing are acting like soy woke snowflakes. Helena, can you explain the phenomenon, which is the rise of inverse liberal identity politics being adopted by the right?
I think it's funny that you call them soy woke snowflakes. I mean, I hate to channel Tim Waltz here of all the people, but it's pretty weird. It's very weird looking at an advert and going, I'm going to scrutinize the ethnicity of the people in my advert. And I'm just like, do you not have better things to do than shout at adverts? And I think most people, even the kind of the wokest of like the liberal identity politics enjoyers, They were never like actually mad when they didn't see the right representation. They just thought maybe we should have more representation. It was broadly just should be more inclusive, right? And unless you're going to have 20 individuals in an advert and scrutinize the population registry so that you know exactly the percentages of each different minority in the country so you can get it spot on so that it looks exactly demographically representative, then what else are you doing here? It doesn't make any sense. And fundamentally, it comes from a huge misunderstanding that the right have about how capitalism works, right? Insofar as they fundamentally, and for a very long time, and probably still do believe, that corporate America and corporate Britain fundamentally are trying to undermine Western values, for example, by forcing diversity on people, when in reality, when you have a multiracial society and you want to sell more products, you there are incredibly highly paid advertising executives who are looking at quarterly sales and quarterly figures and going, well, we had this advert that had different representations of all different minority groups and the majority group as well, all in the same advert. And this had these reactions from market research that we did, and the Black and Asian voters had a 3% greater interest in the product when they saw people who looked like them in the advert. So we're just going to have the whole gamut smorgasbord with all the different ethnicities in one advert to try and maximize our revenue. There is only one ideology that companies have, and it is generating revenue for shareholders. That is the only thing that corporate America and corporate Britain has as an ideology, or as an ideological position, is wanting to generate revenue for shareholders. I think is when the left looks at this, when the left broadly look at this, we'll go, well, this doesn't actually represent the real interests of black and brown people in the country. It's just a virtue signal to get people's attention. And the right wing go, neo-Marxist academics have infiltrated corporate Britain and they're trying to push diversity on us to try and destroy the West. And I'm just like, one of these is a normal position and one of them isn't. It's like the Americans who got mad about like the Cracker Barrel logo changing. Oh, well, they're trying to go woke. Or the Dylan Mulvaney bit for Bud Light, where people were literally attacking beer cans because the company wanted to maximize their revenue by appealing to demographics who hadn't previously bought their product. It's so fundamentally myopic as a position to hold. And again, fundamentally, like, if you're there scrutinizing the ethnicities of people in adverts, like, why are you holding so much personal investment with what corporations do or don't do in terms of their overall branding? I fundamentally couldn't give a shit. Like, it's just this level of commodity fetishism that I just can't understand. I just cannot understand this level of commodity fetishism where people hold so much value and weight towards the cultural impact of like what Jaguar are doing with their sports cars. I'm like, fundamentally, I have material concerns that are far more important than whether or not Jaguar is woke or not.
Yeah, and the thing is though, as you can hear, my disdain for virtue signaling liberal idpol, right? It's like it still was a better time though. Like, political correctness was still pretty good. It's a bit annoying sometimes, right? But I like the idea that people were kind of scared to be openly racist, or politicians had to say nice things, right? Now, of course, again, for liberals, that was amazing for them, whereas us were like, yeah, it doesn't really do anything. Much better than what we have today, people just openly racist, right? But it felt like a house of cards, because now there's been a real pushback from the right because of, what, 5 years or 10 years maybe of political correctness? That's about it. It hasn't lasted very long. And now they've just replaced it with their own idpol. And socialists are like, well, we didn't get socialism under liberal idpol. Certainly not getting socialism under right-wing culture war, freakery, gammon idpol. And it's like, where's the class analysis? Where's the class analysis, Helena?
Well, exactly. Well, the thing is, of course, is that when these people were trying to imply that there was some kind of woke capture of the corporations, and I was just like, well, Trump got elected, they all turned heel. They all immediately changed all of their positions. They all said, well, we're scrapping DEI because Trump's won the election. I'm like, yeah, because they think that now they're going to be more likely to win people over in terms of buying their product and spending their money so they can increase their quarterly sales figures, because they think that the wind has blown a different direction because of the electoral consequences of what's happening in America. You'll be interested to know that that's not happened to the same level in the UK because we voted in a Labour government. Like, it's really not more complex than that. So, again, for so many purported capitalists, people who purport to support free market capitalist economics, they don't fucking understand it, do they? They haven't got a clue. I genuinely believe that, like, if there was a CEO or anyone who's in a directorial position at a large corporation who was pushing any of their own personal politics over the interests of the shareholders, they would fundamentally be breaking their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholder to maximize those dividends. They would be gotten rid of, right? It's just fundamentally for a very long time, and to a lesser extent, continuing in the UK, broadly they haven't been removed because there actually is so many black and brown and woke people to market towards, and actually the broader spectrum of the electorate who get really angry at diversity, it's really small, right? They're very loud, but they're very small in terms of that minority. Whereas broadly, there are a lot of people there who are black and brown who just want to see more people like them in advertising, and fundamentally, it's will make them more likely to buy people's products.
Most people just don't care. Most people don't get mad like Sarah Pagan. I do think, though, if we were taught Marxism as early as nursery, we wouldn't have any of this, because there wouldn't be a conspiracy. It would just be market forces. Let's go on to our final story. I love poking the soy woke right. And I know there's people offended by me saying attacking soy in the chat. I'm sorry, but I like my semi-skimmed milk. Now, British Airways have pulled advertising from Louis Theroux's podcast because his latest guest was Bob Vylan. The airline has withdrawn its adverts from the journalist's podcast after he interviewed Bobby Vylan, whose real name is Pascal Robinson Foster. British Airways told the PA media that the podcast content breached its sponsorship policy. A spokesperson said, "Our sponsorship of the series has now been paused and the advert has been removed. We're grateful that this was brought to our attention, as the content clearly breaches our sponsorship policy in relation to politically sensitive or controversial subject matters." Let's take a look at a clip.
End, the IDF does not rhyme. Wouldn't have caught on, would it? Do you know what I mean? Because that is what we're up there to do. We are there to entertain. We are there to play music. I am a lyricist, right? Deaf to the IDF rhymes. Perfect chant.
Do you stand by the chant, and would you chant that on stage now?
Oh yeah, like what? If I was to go on Glastonbury again tomorrow, yeah, I would do it again. I'm not regretful of it. I'm not regretful of it. Right. I do it again tomorrow, twice on Sundays. Right. I'm not regretful of it at all. Like, the subsequent backlash that I've faced, it's minimal. It's minimal compared to what people in Palestine are going through. If that can be my contribution, and if I can have my Palestinian friends and people that I meet from Palestine that have had to flee, that have lost members in double digits of their family, and they can say, yo, like, your chant, I love it, or it gave me a breath of fresh air or whatever. And I don't want to overstate the importance of the chant. That's not what I'm trying to do. But like, if I have their support, and they're the people that I'm doing it for, they're the people that I'm being vocal for, then what is there to regret?
It does have a point, though. And the IDF, it has no ring to it. But look, here's the real insane thing. Louis Theroux has interviewed Nazis, right? The Westboro Baptist Church and Jimmy Savile, right? That's the nature of Louis Theroux, right? He does documentaries and interviews, and he will literally interview everyone. No one is too extreme. Bob Vylan isn't extreme, by the way, but the point I'm making is no one gives a shit when it's them. But British Airways have pulled advertising because Bob Vylan said he doesn't regret chanting death to the IDF. Remember, right? An occupying army, a terrorist organization of a genocidal state. Well, that was too far. Helena, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's very much linked to our previous story about the supposed ideology of corporations, insofar as you can never really trust to be able to continue doing what you're doing if you rely on the platform or the sponsorship or the interest of private interests, because as soon as anything controversial creeps up, they'll want to be able to get gone immediately quickly, because fundamentally for them, they have a brand image that they want to be able to use to maximize revenue. And if they think that their brand will be undermined by linking it to something controversial, they'll pull the plug. You can't guarantee this stuff because, again, they have an interest that's greater than the supposed kind of support of whatever it is that you're making, you know? Like, of course, I agree with your statement about the reality of what was being said there, in the, yeah, like, why should anyone care about saying death to the IDF? Like, who should care? It's an army. Like, people who serve in armies die. Like, it's a war. That's what they keep telling us, right? It's like, oh, well, you're sad about Palestinians dying. Well, it's a war. People die in a war. And I'm just like, well, civilians aren't supposed to die. At least not those who are ones who don't need to do so because of legitimate military aims. And I don't think the ethnic cleansing of Palestine totally and genocide is a legitimate military aim. Do you? I don't think many people would agree with that statement, you know? And yet, one people who you'd expect to die on a battlefield to be members of an army, and a genocidal terrorist army that's trying to ethnically cleanse Palestine, no sympathy. Like, no sympathy at all. And as you point out, the what's ludicrous here is that British Airways somehow didn't care when it was Daniela Weiss, when it was the Westboro Baptist Church, when it was actual neo-Nazis, right? Some guy who led a chant on stage, a punk rock musician getting up on stage and saying something controversial. Guards, please. It's just, what a gigantic storm in a teacup this whole thing was. It's because if somebody, for example, said death to Hamas, do you think there would have been any of the same kind of outrage? Of course there wouldn't be. You know? And it just shows you about how Western interests are seen globally as being beyond criticism, or at least beyond the same kind of criticism that those that aren't of the West are perfectly fine to be criticized in that same way.
You also kind of clarified his chant, which even it waters it down even more, because he was saying, well, you say death to capitalism, you say death to this, death to that, you know, it's like I said, end the IDF didn't rhyme well. So even like in his frame of mind, it was just based like, you call death to so many things when you want something to end. He literally said, I just mean to end. Now, you know, even if someone said death to the IDF in the literal sense, I'm like, they are still an occupied genocidal army. You can't get me to feel sorry. But I love Louis Theroux's like documents, especially the Westboro Baptist Church. I love them. I think it's so fascinating. You know, some of these people go to veterans' funerals and literally laugh that they're dead. I've never quite understood why though, because what, gay people exist and they then go to you know, soldiers' funerals. I've never understood it, but I think it's so fascinating. I love looking into these worlds and seeing people who are absolutely insane. And I also think it's educational moment to see those who have some really deranged thinkings. But like, conversation and debate is so dead. It's so dead that we literally have, you're right, a punk rock band being cancelled, which I find is very ironic when you got people like who are older, like, you know, when you watch old TV shows and comedy stuff, and it's a bit controversial, a bit out there, like, they'd never make that these days. Well, I'll tell you what, if we've got a controversial singer, well, you know, they're making it these days. Yeah, funny stuff.
Well, the same thing happened to Reginald D. Hunter. He had the whole of like, the comedian, yeah, the whole of the fucking like Zionist like rogues gallery of idiots were having a go at him for saying like anti-Israeli stand-up, right? And I'm just like, he was criticizing a genocidal state. Like, come on, get with the program. Are you triggered? Do you need to save space from the poor comedian, from the nasty comedian? Said not. Oh, he criticised your emotional support ethno state. Oh, diddums.
For those that commit genocide and support genocide, they sure are big pussies, aren't they?
Crybabies.
Crybabies. Okay, right. Let's go to our comments. Let's bring Ben McLean in. I'm sure you've been waiting to bring out our fantastic comments. How are you, Ben?
Not too bad. I love the phrase emotional support ethno state, by the way, Helena. That is fantastic. All right, so let's take a look at some of the comments. We'll start with super chats and new memberships, because Chloe just became a member. Thank you.
Yes, welcome.
Michael gifted a turn left membership. Thank you very much, Michael. And Specs Bean Farmer, always very generous, gifted 5 turn left memberships. You are absolutely fantastic, Specs. We love you very much. Moebius gifted a turn left membership as well. Thank you very much, Moebius. And this is one I do want you guys to respond to. Journeying Jordan said, I'm personally concerned about the Alba defections. I hope your party tells them Alba policies and SA apologia isn't welcome. So just for a bit of context, I had to look this up because I wasn't aware. The ex-MEP Hugh Kerr, who was with the Alba Party, which, for those who don't know, is basically the SNP but TERF. That's pretty much how I describe them. They're basically the SNP but transphobic. And it appears there's some SA apologia and stuff in there. Hugh Kerr quit the Alba Party to join your party, and I did want to get some reaction to that, because this wasn't the only comment about that particular comment on your party, shall we say.
Well, I mean, if your party are, kind of the phantasm of a party at this point, like it's a party only in theory, then Alba are even more of like not a real party. I mean, the Alba have always just kind of been a weird personality cult around Alex Salmond, from what I've seen broadly. That's all that it ever was, and you'll see since what's happened with Alex Salmond, that they've not really had much direction. So I'm not surprised people are jumping ship from Alba that really never got off the ground in the first place. The only time it ever really wins the only time it's ever had any representation is from defections. It barely wins anything. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people in the Alba Party who agree with the socialist values of your party, but if we want to have a party that is inclusive of, for example, trans people, then having people who have clearly jumped ship from Albus, which is literally only really formed because they thought the SNP were too woke, essentially, or too concerned with issues of identity, when in the vast majority of cases, by the way, the only people who actually make a fuss about the identity politics stuff are people criticising the SNP's policies. The SNP will just implement the policy and they'll get on with it. And then people like Rishi Sunak, when the gender recognition bill that got kind of agreement with all of the parties in Holyrood at the time, and Alba got mad about it. Oh, they're obsessed with trans people. I'm like, no, you're obsessed with trans people. They're passing a policy. Everyone agreed with it. The discussion was over, and then Rishi Sunak decided to make a thing, right? Outside of that, the SNP are getting on with the role of governance, It's a genuine ideological kind of predilection they have against the inclusion of trans people. And if those people who are willing to leave SNP to join Alba are now getting on with your party, that is a concern, certainly.
Yes, I think it's probably political opportunism. I think you probably agree with that. I didn't know about that, actually. So that's really interesting. I appreciate Journeying Jordan, you bringing that up. But again, I think this goes to show, especially what I find strange, is that within the email, of course, a bunch of your party emails, but one of them said you can't be a member of another political party. And they're like, okay, it only applies to national parties. So in a sense, they're like, okay, there's actually certain red lines here, but Alba doesn't seem to be one of them. Again, I don't really know what's going on. I'm super confused, and I don't understand why people are jumping ship to a party that's not really formed. But in terms of Alba, this seemed way more about political opportunism. I don't have much to say about your party these days.
I was just like, if we really, really wanted like a class reductionist, anti-woke left party, then there's a Workers' Party of Britain already. They have one precious little. George Galloway won once because he's George Galloway and he's popular, but that was about him, not really the party. Other than that, it just seems to be a meme party at this point.
I mean, he should have went back on Big Brother and done that purring thing again. He probably would have won a seat at the election.
Without Rula Lenska's kind of pure animal magnetism, I don't think he'd be able to coax that out of George Galloway.
I still can't. You know that British politics isn't fucking real. When George Galloway did that, you have clips of him doing masterful oratory against the Iraq War and speaking up for Palestine, and then he's fucking licking someone's hands pretending he's a cat.
Honestly, you know what? There are many bad things about this country, but the level to which our politicians just don't give a shit, honestly, slay.
Yeah. Here for it.
Yeah, the thing with George Galloway, I feel like he has lost personality in the last, like, love him or hate him, and I certainly don't love him. I feel like he has lost personality, and like in the last sort of 10 years or so, that he had during like the time of the Iraq War.
Yeah.
And he seems to have replaced that personality with a hat that he wears all the time. And I've no idea why he thought that having no personality but a hat would be helpful for him. But there we are.
See, at least Curtis Lewa has both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The hat and the personality.
Yes.
Don't go blazing me, Zoran.
I was shot 4 times. The question was about inflation, sir. Funny guy.
So this isn't Arby's. Yeah, the our Curtis Daly has a jacket, or should have a blazer. People in the chat were complaining that he doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah,
so Jay said with a £2 donation.
Thank you.
Love you guys. Thank you very much, Jay. We appreciate you. And Kieran Hodges said, absolutely love these videos. Superb. And Vegan Barnsley said, make soy great again, with a £9.99 donation. Love that.
I think I started a discourse, about milk and soy in the chat. I'm looking forward to the fallout.
You can be like Nigel Farage. You can be complaining about woke milk.
Yeah.
This is how it
What's all
starts,
these
Curtis.
Latin woke milk? Wow, what is all this woke milk?
Oh no! Again, another fucking example.
Yes,
another example of right wingers just having like they don't have real problems. They don't have real problems. They're out complaining about milk. I'm like, yeah, like some people don't drink dairy. Like, well done. Welcome to the real world. Our poor British dairy farmers. Well, maybe they should compete better in the free market.
Yeah,
huh?
In the free market capitalism, they so love.
Oh, there's so much capacity to like bully these people. Like, we don't bully them enough. We just don't bully them enough.
Because the thing is, right, there are plenty of reform voters who do genuinely have real problems, and it's the failure of the uni party, of the political consensus, to appeal to their real problems, or indeed offer solutions to their real problems. And in the absence of, a Labour Party that they previously had voted for, them going to reform because they feel like they have no choice. It's about us to try and sell them solutions. But the real kind of die hard, the party faithful of reform, so many of them are just people without real problems. They're people to which the wrong colour, the wrong ethnicities in adverts and the wrong kind of milk are genuine kind of society warping concerns for them. I'm just like, you need to get out more and have some friends.
So this was the actual comment. Would you like me to be the cat? It just, as soon as I read it, that came into my head. Would you like me to be the cat? Oh God.
Dear God. And Carl gifted 5-turn left membership.
Thank you, Carl.
Another regular contributor. Thank you so much, Carl. We appreciate you. We see you. And now I just picked up on some of the others, some of the other comments that we got. So I can't even say the name. Enteries and JEA. I almost said NJ because I went into no just NJ. Sorry. Said also the likelihood that the party is 17% is low, as most polling institutes put them at like 12-13%, which is an increase but not staggering, as some pollsters have said. Do you guys think we might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, or do you think relative?
It's Lord Ashcroft polls. They're a crappy pollster that never gets anything right. So, you know what, we'll have to take it with a pinch of salt. But broadly, what we're talking about here is the direction of travel. Yep. And the polling average across all of them is showing the Greens increasing. And you know what? YouGov had us on 15%. YouGov is like the gold standard of pollster. You know, all the people who want to kind of denigrate the Greens' rise, they'll go, well, More in Common still have the Greens on 9%. They're polling so low, they won't even include Zach Polanski and all of their different kind of breakdowns of leadership support. And I'm just like, well, More in Common get as lower rating as pollsters as Lord Ashcroft do. So, you know, why don't we actually go with the gold standard, which is YouGov, which has us on 15.
Which, we'll wait for Survation is now we'll wait for YouGov, and YouGov has slayed and delivered. Look, it is right. 70% is at this time probably massively overblowing it. But again, it's about the direction travel. It's about the momentum. But also, I don't know if this sounds wrong, controversial, or cynical, but it's important to highlight it because there's a weird psychological thing when it comes to voters, is that A lot of people would like to vote differently, but they won't if they don't think the momentum's there. They think, I won't vote for this party because I don't think they're going to win. That's how momentum works, because then when they start getting popular, more and more people then go, oh, actually, they might be a sort of a real electoral vehicle here. So if we keep highlighting, oh, look, they've just hit 17%, that's going to show people, well, they do have a momentum. And one might say that's a little bit of spin and political propaganda. Let's be very clear here, right? We're living in a neoliberal capitalist system, right? Our tagline of this channel says a media for socialism. We are fucking biased. We don't lie, of course, but we are absolutely pushing a political agenda, which is left-wing politics. So yeah, we're going to highlight polls that have them on 70%. And by the way, it's not wrong. It's not wrong. It's not lying. It's a fact. One poll has them on 70%. Yes, do we trust them completely? Maybe not that high. So that was part of it's politics, guys.
I mean, it's a motivating factor for a load of things, right? Like, it was that constituency poll in Caerphilly that put reform ahead, that galvanised people to go out and tactically vote for Plaid Cymru, knowing that Labour weren't in it, to try and unseat reform, right? That poll was important at propelling Plaid Cymru into a victory at the Caerphilly by-election. And the same will be true at the local elections next year. People will be thinking about voting Green for probably potentially lots of them for the first time, places like London. And first of all, it's a lower stakes election. So they're more likely to change their votes. And if they broadly see that actually the Greens are a fighting force electorally, we are on 15, 16, 17% in the polls, we're equal with Labour, then they don't have any reason to not vote for us under the grounds, well, they'll never win anyway. And then if we are successful in those elections at Holyrood, in the local elections broadly in May, then what that will also lead to is what happened with reform in May. People had this kind of understanding that they were going to be like on the rise. They didn't know whether they were going to be successful, but thought might as well give them a go because we've abandoned the Tories. They swept through council after council. All 18 Tory defences were lost. And then it was immediately after that, people got the impetus to continue to vote for reform because it wasn't just a protest vote. They could prove that they could win. It's why these local elections this May are so important, because it will be that litmus test where people who are curious about voting Green will potentially be able to see us as a party that can win rather than a party to protest against the Uni Party. And that will lead us to go from the 15, 16, 17% we're on now, which is what reform we're on before the locals, to the 20s, 25s, whatever is necessary for us to be much better once we've proved that we can win and people feel happy to vote for us because people don't like voting for losers.
Do you I want to quickly ask you, Helena, do you genuinely think that by 2030 it could actually be, in terms of vote share, Reform versus Greens? Now, I appreciate that under first past the post, it's going to favour Labour in terms of seats, but in terms of the polling, do you think it's actually possible that first and second places between Reform and the Green Party in terms of just pure vote share, not seats?
I think it's perfectly possible. Like, it's plausible, certainly. I mean, again, like, depends how many Labour voters that we can win over by appealing to them on their values. Again, it would also be the tactical voting consideration. What you're seeing really is that there isn't much tactical voting going on between Tories and Reform. The fact that Tories have any votes left shows that tactical voting is pretty non-existent.
Yeah.
And because you can't really look at things like Caerphilly or places like that, because the Conservatives were never winning there anyway. You know, so tactical voting isn't really much of a thing on the right. So the Greens might be on 20% or whatever, but their seat count will be broadly reflective of a higher vote share, because you're essentially vote swapping in terms of people who would vote Green in a seat but they can't win will vote for Plaid Cymru or the SNP or whatever. And in seats where no one can beat Reform other than the Green Party in places like Huddersfield or places like Birkenhead or whatever, then people are going to vote Green instead. Like, there's going to be this level of tactical voting on the left that's not going to happen on the right. And that will be a way in which the vote share might be lower than what is necessary to win, but will be high enough, so much so that it will convince people that the Greens are the correct vote to go for to stop Reform.
I do think you're right. People don't like voting for losers. They don't like voting for losers, and I feel like there is an extent to which the right wing are really good at overplaying every little victory they get, and the left don't do that. And we need to start doing it. We need to start, like, every time that they, every time that they fall onto their back, you've just got to not let them up and keep mocking them. Because if you're mocking, if you're loud, if you're entertaining, particularly in a social media entertainment economy, if you're in an attention economy, I mean, Zach's already proven how effective that is. Just like play it up all the time. Just a couple more comments that I thought were worth highlighting that I won't ask you to comment on. So Leo said, I heard this in Leo's voice when I read it. What does Adnan Hussein actually have to do / say for your party to cut ties? He doesn't fit in an explicitly socialist party. I'm just going to leave these as comments rather than ask you to comment on them. As I feel like we've already kind of covered the ground. And Natalie said, as a lean green transgender machine, which I thought was a brilliant phrase, if I'm with Zach and not Zara and the Turf Brigade. I just thought it was interesting that we have two trans people there who've been loyal followers of the show and have been absolutely brilliant to us over time, and they've both come to the conclusion that the Greens are where it's at and your party isn't. Terry Regan said reform is still too high. I think there's a lot of feeling among the sort of general public that reform being high necessarily means that if the Greens raise up if the Greens gain, then it's at the expense of Labour, and therefore reform will gain more in the polls. I don't think this is necessarily true. Should we be worried about, and it sounds ridiculous before I'm even going to say it, should we be worried about the Greens splitting the left-wing vote between Labour? I feel ridiculous asking you, because I know Labour are not a left-wing party, but they are a keeping reform out party, I suppose.
I mean,
is this something we should be worried about?
I think it is worth pointing out that even though Labour aren't a left-wing party, they still have left-wing people who vote for them. That's what's important to understand here, is that the Labour Party have so much electoral kind of relevance because they have a name attached to them that's got a prestige. There's a prestige to the Labour title, and the history of the Labour movement and the history of the Labour Party is a representation of that. Now, we all know that Keir Starmer doesn't represent that in the slightest, and that's what's been purged from the party. But people who have been Labour voters all their life, people who've been part of the Labour movement, they've grown up in Labour families. They are probably still very left wing, and they have ties to the Labour Party because of what that represents. And again, it's our job to get them to understand that the party that they loved, the party that they knew, does not exist anymore. So when you say, was there a possibility of them splitting the vote? And I'm like, well, if Labour are concerned about us splitting the vote and it's going to let them lose the election, they have two options, right? They've got two options. First of all, win us back. Win us back with policy. Get on board with the things that we would like to see in terms of policy. I mean, you probably have to get rid of everybody who supported the genocide, but by the by, right? Like, you need, when you see a sea change, to win us back in terms of what we want to see in terms of policy, which they don't want to do. In fact, they want to go further, right, it seems, from West Streeting's response to the Caerphilly by-election. And second of all, change the voting system. You think that, well, people will have to come back to us because it's first past the post? I promise you they won't. I promise you they will not come back to you under first past the post, right? You have 400 MPs, cross-party consensus. The biggest APPG in the Commons is about fair elections and electoral reform, right? You want to ensure that reform against government change the electoral system. It's up to them. They've got the power. They've got the control, you know? At the moment, people are hating them and they're going to lose the next election, and reform will destroy the country when they get into government. They have the power to stop that in two different ways, and they are doing neither of them, and that's up to them.
PR would severely dilute reform's seats as well. It's why I really, really disagree with what Zach Polanski said, which is that he wouldn't support PR if it could help Farage get into number 10. But it's like, under first past the post, a lot of this polling shows that reform are way ahead on seats. Well, actually, their seats are diluted under PR. In terms of Labour, obviously they're not a left-wing party, but I hear what you're saying, right? They are currently the second largest party. Technically, right now, they're the only party that can stop reform. And I'm making a strategic argument or moral argument. The problem is, I don't think they can stop reform. they may be polling number 2 generally. I don't think they can stop reform. And actually, Labour existing is now hindering the progress of left-wing parties. I can see the Green Party polling higher than the Labour Party, but the Labour Party needs to die in order for that to happen. Look, at the end of the day, we're 4 years away from a general election. So many times have we been told now is not the time. You know, you can't go left. You need to stay within the confines of the political class and the Overton window, which is basically Labour or Tory, and that's all you got. And we're always told now is not the right time. Now is the right time. General election isn't round the corner. We've got a long time. The growth of the Greens has happened extremely quickly in a short amount of time. What happens in 2 years' time? I think in the next election they get 300,000 members, and it'll be more than the Labour Party. They could have the biggest membership out of every single political party. More money, more attention, whatever. So now is the time to try and build that alternative, because we gave our we gave our last energy of left-wing politics under Labour with Jeremy Corbyn. Right, Jeremy Corbyn was the compromise candidate. We voted for the Margaret Hodges. We voted for the Stephen Kinnocks. We voted for these utter bastards because we could get some kind of semblance of social democracy through the traditional route of the Labour Party. And guess what? Not only did it work, but the political class absolutely pissed their pants. And now there's no semblance of social democracy in the Labour Party. So it's not about, to those, and I know, Ben, you're doing more of a devil's advocate argument, for those that say we still need to stick with Labour, we absolutely can't. We can't afford to stick with Labour. We have to replace them. And I think Zach Palancy's saying, I don't want to worry Labour. I don't want to push them left. I want to replace them. I think he's absolutely right.
Yeah, I fundamentally agree. And as you say, like, if this was, 8 months away from an election and there was like a 4-way split in the vote and Reform were 10 points ahead, then maybe there's an argument here. There's no argument 4 years away from an election. Like, it's ridiculous to say that, well, things that we're saying on social media in 2025 are going to be relevant for an election in 2029. Like, I'm sorry, like, either Labour are going to, screw the pooch and it'll be up to somebody else to clean up the mess and take the fight to Reform. Or Labour will change tack. The whole Starmer Politburo will be cleansed from the top, and they'll throw out an Andy Burnham or whoever it is into a leadership position, and he'll burn a picture of Keir Starmer on the steps of Downing Street and going, "That's over. That shit's over. I apologise for the brief centrist interregnum. We're doing left-wing populism." Then maybe they would be able to win back voters by implementing policy that people want. But Starmerism has a vice grip over the mechanisms internally within the party. They seem completely unconcerned with the people they're losing to the left. I don't think a real drubbing that looks like they're going to get in their defence of what looks like 70% of the councils that are up for election in 2026 in May, even if they will still not see that the writing's on the wall. They could get completely rinsed by the Green Party in like London or in Bristol or Manchester or whatever, and they would just like put their head in their hands and going, see no evil, like, we're still looking about the algorithm, the electoral super genius Morgan McSweeney has given to us and what is the way to win an election. Even if they support popular policies, by supporting it, Keir Starmer makes those policies unpopular. There was a plurality support for digital ID. As soon as fucking Sir Starmer puts his name to it, suddenly everyone hates it, right? Like, it's like there's no route to victory for Starmerism. There is no route to victory for it at all, no matter what Paul Mason thinks. I do understand social democracy from Marxist perspective.
None of us know what Paul Mason thinks.
Right? Like, I do understand social democracy from Marxist perspective. And you actually have to do the social democracy for it to be successful. And they're not fucking doing it, right? Like, it's really not difficult. And in the absence of proper social democratic policy, a proper prospectus for making people's lives better and not pissing off everybody who actually would potentially vote the Labour Party, then there's going to have to be an alternative.
They're so arrogant and entitled. Like, it seems to me like largely is the Labour Party and the Dems in America are the only political parties I know of that choose to lecture their voters the whole time, and just sort of like entitled to their votes. It's insane.
Like Bill Clinton going into Dearborn, Michigan, going, "What about Judea and Samaria?" And I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about, Bill? What the fuck are you talking about?" Honestly.
Yeah, it's wild.
There's a great quote, actually. For once in my life, and I probably will never do this again, I retweeted Aaron Banks one time, and he was talking about how Seb Payne in the Independent was wanging on about how isn't it terrible how Reform UK voters splitting the right vote allowed Labour to win a landslide, and Aaron Banks was like, there are many reasons to dislike the Conservative Party. The worst thing about them is their entitlement. Feeling entitled to people's votes who they've abandoned, right? They've abandoned the people who continually voted Conservative for reduced immigration, whatever it is. And whilst, they may be bad on policy and we disagree on that, but the fact that they still, after all this time, feel entitled to the votes of Conservatives in this country, whilst not representing conservatism at all, not in terms of economics, right? The disaster neoliberalism isn't conservative. Obviously, Reform recommend that too, but even so, Aaron Banks was like, the worst part is that level of entitlement. And the exact same is true of the Labour Party. The exact same is true of the Labour Party. They reek of entitlement. And it's what happens when you have a permanent political class. Because not only are they entitled, they're so used to being the permanent political class, they are fundamentally shit at their job. Because they don't have to care about being good to win, because they are able to win off of the back of kind of this level, as I mentioned, of prestige, or this kind of the feeling of a divine right to rule. This idea of the people have nowhere else to go, you have to vote for us. So people never, there's no kind of talent in politics, not in terms of politicking and campaigning or even in governance, because fundamentally their role is to continue to be a permanent political class rather than doing things that allow them to win elections. And now that system's broken down, you see these people throw their toys out of the pram and go, how dare you not support us? We're the permanent political class. I'm like, no, fuck it. If you can't win people's votes and if you can't govern correctly, we'll kick you the fuck out. Sling your ruck on your bike.
Democracy. I think I can't wait for the day the Conservatives get down to one seat, and that lone one seat still won't be Seb Payne, because he'll never be picked as a fucking candidate for the Conservatives.
Bookmark this, record it, clip it. I think the Conservatives will get fewer seats than Plaid Cymru at the next election. Bookmark it. That's my prediction.
There we go.
I think Plaid will get like 12 to 15 seats, because I think that there'll be a tactical vote for them in Wales. Now we've seen what's happened in Caerphilly and will happen in the Senedd as well. That'll be the litmus test on the Welsh elections being Plaid versus Reform. I think Plaid will get double digits of seats and the Conservatives will get wiped out. That's what I think will happen.
That's a no justice prediction there.
Let's keep that up. Yeah. I'm just in my head. I'm just haunted by Chuck Schumer doing his chant of "We will win, we will win" at the election. I think with campaign messaging like that, how could this possibly go wrong? Sorry.
Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries are electoral machines.
Oh, Jesus Christ. It's so painful, isn't it? And sorry, not to go to KPD, German Communist Party, on you, but also the Labour Party have very clearly chosen which way they want the future to be by not going with electoral reform right now. They've chosen the future, and they would rather put reform in charge than cede any ground to the left.
Same with Caerphilly. They absolutely would have preferred reform winning than Plaid. I'm 100% convinced of it.
Yes. Yeah, we've gone on quite a while. I'll just whiz through a couple of comments. I won't ask you for comments on these next few. Specs Bean Farmer said the cost of blazers is rising too.
I've got. Don't worry, you'll see the return of them, right? Don't worry about that.
Flow Snake said, "When I see adverts for plumbing products, I'm fuming. Plumbers are only a tiny fraction of the population." How many adverts do you see for plumbing products? Anyway, Callum Macaulay said, "Make the girl M&M sexy again." I fundamentally agree. We're talking about the real issues on this channel. All right.
You won't get it anywhere else.
See, they're weird. Yeah. The right wing are weird. Like I can't believe Tim Waltz stopped calling them weird, because they are weird.
Yes,
that was the highlight of the campaign, and they stopped.
Yeah, it worked. It really works. Like calling out how fucking weird they are and laughing at them.
We'll concede the mantle.
I tell you why it works. It works because it strips them of the mystique of their masculinity. That's what mocking them does, and that's why it's so fundamental.
And I think that's why I think that the moral indignation from Wes Streeting on Laura Koonsberg is totally the wrong approach. Most people already have an opinion on whether they care about people in adverts or not, and the reality is that you don't want to give these people air, because then they can convince people. You have to dismiss them as cranks and lunatics, because fundamentally that's what they are. Treating Sarah Pochin as a serious political actor is that's not what you need to do. Dismiss these people as cranks and loonies, because because she is one.
Yeah, 100%.
It's shame.
yeah.
It's political shaming. That's what works.
Derision.
Yeah, it's shame, but you've got to be careful because it's not shame as in you're dangerous and you're a Nazi shame.
No, it's shame as in
you're ridiculous.
You're
you know?
you're a loser. You're a weirdo.
Yeah, you're a loser. You're a
soy.
weirdo. You're a freak. Yeah, that's
And I
what we
don't
want.
give a fuck. I've absolutely adopted right wing framing by calling people soy. And you know what? I can see the appeal. It's so fun. I've got no issue with people who drink soy milk, by the way. Couldn't give a fuck. I just love people calling people so soy woke right. It's funny.
Well, 'cause you know it'll trigger right wingers. You know that it'll get them mad.
Yes, yeah. And that's partially if people have been watching the Turn Left Twitter, that's partially what I've been doing with some Zach Polanski memes at the moment, trying to wind them up basically. So Alyssa said, everyone donate £1 when someone says the words fundamentally. Very true. William said, get him, and this was in reference to Bob Villan, whose real name I cannot remember. Sorry.
Pascal something.
Pascal
something Pascal.
Pascal Sauvage.
I mean, he's probably, if anything, he's
Robinson
probably,
Foster, double-barreled name.
He's probably thinking, why haven't they asked me yet?
Yeah, I'm sure he is. And Michael said, I love the way his mind speaks. I wouldn't keep my calm with these questions. Speaking of Bob Villan. And with that, I'm going to leave the comment section there because we've run way over once again. I'm so sorry.
I think it's a good
discussion.
It was good, but I also think we to make up for Friday.
True.
We've given a little bit extra.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
But
sorry about that.
Ben, thank you so much. Great comments, but of course that is all we have time for. Thank you to our viewers who tuned in. Of course, thank you to Helena for joining me tonight. Absolutely wonderful stuff. Once again, remember, please like this stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. Of course, if you want us to grow, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you could become a YouTube member for just 99p. Now, do not go anywhere because we're going to raid into Helena, who's still streaming. So keep your asses here. And when we finish, you'll be exported over. Thank you so much. And we will see you on Wednesday.